right, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to put together a couple of little plain notebooks. I'm using them as some of my prayer journals, and I was giving some away as gifts, and I thought it'd be a great time to use up some of the papers I have printed out. So I just grabbed some of this kit that you're looking at is actually called my Forge kit. And so I grabbed a piece of that I wanted to use as the cover of this little notebook. It's not going to be real big at all, but I just wanted to have something that I could write down prayer requests in when I'm at Bible study. So I pulled out the cover and I just folded it in half, and I printed some papers just with some dots on it. I like the dots to kind of be the lines that you see on them. And then I'm just going to go through each one of them and fold them in half. So these are US letter size papers, and they are actually 8.5 by 11, and that's the same as the cover. So all of my papers here are going to be the same size. And I'm using this fun paper that I found that already looks coffee dyed or tea dyed. And so that, saved me some time, and it makes it easier to print on sometimes as well. So some of them are very much the same. So I'm just trying to flip them either inside or out so that different sides are showing. So I'm going to do that, and I am folding in half 10 inside papers. So we have one cover and then 10 papers to go on the inside. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit so that you don't have to watch this in real time, but these are pretty quick and come together nicely. So now I'm just making sure that the edges are creased really well. And then I'm going to put this one signature together. So I'm just putting the papers inside of each other one at a time. And because so many of them are the same, I'm trying to kind of put them in backwards and forwards so that every page doesn't look exactly the same as you flip through. So now I'm making sure those are all even. And then what I'm going to do is, because when you fold papers and put them inside, the inside papers start to stick out, and I want that to be straight. So I'm just trying to get them as even as possible on the inside and on the top and bottom. And then I'm going to hold them together with a clip there. And then I'm just going to use a ruler and my this is like a box cutter knife that I'm using there, and it's got a very sharp blade, and I do recommend that if you're doing this kind of cutting. Now, I did have to stand up to do it because I wanted, and pardon my head there, because I wanted to be right on top of it as I cut down the edges off there. So now I have a straight edge for those 10 papers that are together. And that will be nice because once I put it into the cover, then they won't be sort of sticking out on an angle like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through both the cover and all of my papers, and I'm just rounding the corners of the outside edges of all the papers. And one thing I did want to mention for the corner rounding is, as you are rounding corners, after you've cut the edges off, be sure that you keep the papers in the same order because if they get in a different order, all the pages won't be lined up anymore. So because you're cutting off the edge of the papers, it makes them all different sizes. So you really need to keep them in the same order as you're putting them back inside of each other so that they have that same straight edge along the side. All right, so let's get this place cleaned up and then we'll start putting the rest together here. All right, the first thing I decided to do was I took another piece of the same kit, and I decided I wanted to make some pockets on the insides of my corners. I love when I have notebooks and journals that have lots of pockets for me to put things in. So what I did for the right side pocket is I cut that one the same height as my paper, and I cut it about 3 inches wide so that I would have a nice large sort of tuck spot on the back side. And then for the pocket on the front, that one I cut down about 5 inches wide and then 3.5 inches tall. And for each one, I'm putting a little notch in them to make it easier, to put papers in and things like that. And then I'm just going to glue the 3 sides on each one of them. And as you saw, I did round any of the corners that were lined up with the edge so that, they would match, the corner rounding would match there. So I'm just using, this is a glue that I got actually at the dollar store, and it works a lot like art glitter glue, and I really like that. So as you can see, when I put this pocket down, it doesn't quite go to the seam. And I did that on purpose just to make it easier, that I wouldn't have to, worry about my pocket going over the edge or anything like that. And then this tuck spot here, which is kind of a side pocket, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm gluing the 3 edges, and then I will line it up along the outside edge and then make sure that stays down until everything's dry. Usually after I glue something down, I just try to make sure my glue hasn't, squeezed into spaces where I don't want them to be, which is why I kind of took that little piece of paper and just made sure the whole pocket was open and working the way I wanted it to. And so now we'll just let that dry to be sure that everything is not going to stick together. Now the next part is, you can see I've put my inside pages into my cover, and I'm using these really big paper clips to hold everything together to do the next step. So I'm going to be putting this together with staples. So I didn't want to sew these. I wanted to kind of use staples to put them together. And you can see these are my staples here. They're just standard staples. They're about a 1/2 inch wide. And so I made myself, I'm pulling them apart here with some pliers, and I pulled apart 3 of them so that I can use them to bind the whole notebook together. So I'm just kind of pulling those apart. I'm going to put those on the side there until we're ready to use them. Now I did make a template, the height of my notebook, and then I put in holes where I wanted the 3 staples to go. So I have them close to the top and bottom, about a 1/2 inch away from the top and the bottom. And then I also have one that'll go in the middle there. And so that template helped me make sure, I have my 1/2 inch holes, and then I have the staples kind of spread evenly throughout the entire spine there. And then I'm just using, this is my little paper piercer that I'm using to make these holes. And it may seem like the holes are going to be, bigger than the staples, but it actually works out perfectly. So I'm just putting the book kind of on its end, and then I am pushing the staples right into those holes that I just made. And then after I put one staple in, I turn it over, make sure both of the ends of my staples are coming through, and I'm actually using a flat head screwdriver to push them down, these staples, when I push them down. And I'm just sort of, working them in until I make sure that they have a nice hold on the paper that I'm working on. So I'm just going to go down the edge of the spine, putting my 3 staples in each of the 3 sections that I created holes for them, and using my screwdriver to kind of just pull those staples in, and then making sure they're aligned on the fold in the middle as best as I can there. So, and I just did, one on one side down to the middle, and then I'm doing the last one. And it really seemed like those paper clips that I was using held everything in place pretty well. And 10 pages was just about the most that I could use for this project. I think if I would have gone any more, those staples probably wouldn't have held on so well. So now that I have all the staples in, I'm just folding it in half, and I will probably put it underneath something to make sure it stays nice and folded. All right, so now I decided, of course, I wanted to have some decoration on the outside, and I got some of the die cuts out that are like label shapes here, and I thought I would do 2. One so I could have kind of a frame around it, and a label that you could write on the inside. And in the end, you might be able to see here that I decided to go with 2 smaller sizes. I didn't want a giant label on this. I thought it would be nice to kind of have a smaller label where you could maybe just put dates or the year or something like that on there. So I am putting the smaller label on a black die cut there to just so that it pops out there and, is easily contrasted with the rest of the cover. And so we're just going to glue that down. And I'm probably going to call it a day after this. I like that this is just a plain little notebook that I can use to write whatever I want to on here. And after this dries, I'm just going to do a little flip through, make sure my pockets on the front and back are still nicely opened there. So now that they're probably completely dry, making sure they are nice and open. And then I'm just going through and making sure all of my pages are kind of smooth and creased nicely. Once again, I'll probably put this under some books before I do anything with it to make sure that it stays nice and flat. Since there are, 10 pages folded in on each other, I think that always helps there when you do a notebook like this. And the back tuck spot is nice and big. And there you have it. All right, and I just wanted to show you that I did use some different papers. I used some digitals that I had, but then I also just used some scrapbook paper with some different inside papers. So you can certainly use up whatever you have to make these fun little notebooks. And like I said, they make great gifts and just for you to throw in your pocket and use wherever. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, friends. Bye-bye.